Welcome to Map It Marketing for small business owners who want to become more confident and capable in their marketing. I'm Rachel Klaver, and I'm a small business owner, just like you. I've learnt that there are so many different things that we are supposed to do all the time. And trying to work it all out is, quite frankly, often very confusing. In this podcast, we're going to explore what those things are and whether you need to pay attention to them. Ready? Let's get started. Hello, it's so lovely to connect with you again. I've said it before and I'm saying it again. I am not one to get excited about celebrities, but when it comes to amazing creatives, marketers and writers, well, I do get a bit fangirly. In today's episode of Map It Marketing, episode 17, we're talking to Lizzie Davidson, whose LinkedIn posts are my daily go-to for great information, excellent advice, and the occasional professional disagreement. To be honest, I could have booked Lizzie to talk to you about almost any type of writing and content. She is a highly skilled writer when it comes to writing. However, months ago, Lizzie did a week-long series of posts around case studies and the power of them. We often press the importance of case studies in marketing, specifically for service-based businesses, to be used as social proof and third-party referral. For a long time, Identify was not really doing anything of merit worth us doing a case study, embarrassingly so, which you'll know from episode 2. But thankfully, these days are past, and we now try to collect a few every year. We personally outsource our case studies to an external writer, as I find it really hard to talk us up, and I get really embarrassed when clients say nice things about us and tend to shut them down. However, Lizzie does think it's possible to do these in-house, which is one of the things I'm going to be sure to be chatting with her today. Lizzie's going to walk you through what a case study is, why you need it, and how to make sure it's got all the important elements to build trust in the reader. Lizzie is a B2B content marketing strategist. Specialist. She's 20 years experience in copy and business development, and she's got a really strong strength in writing copy, particularly that will help get the sale. She crafts magnetic website copy, and she and I both believe that great content marketing will attract clients who dig your vibe, love your work, and pay you what you're worth. I'm so looking forward to having this conversation with Lizzie. We're going quite deep around case studies and how to build them out, and I'm so glad that you're here to enjoy it too. Welcome to episode 22 of Map It Marketing. I'm really excited to have Lizzie Davidson, who I'm going to introduce to you in just a moment, with us today. But before I do, I want to say thank you so much for taking your time to listen to this podcast. Your ear time is important time, and I know you've got lots of choices, so thank you for choosing to listen to me and Lizzie today. And also thank you for all the lovely feedback that you give us and the reviews. It is so appreciated, and it makes my little heart happy, and totally justifies the CFO that I'm allowed to keep on doing the podcast too, as an aside. Just before I do introduce Lizzie, if you would like to talk about things that come up through this podcast, please do come to my favorite part of the internet, which is our Facebook group, Map It Marketing, the same name. And you can come and ask questions in there about anything to do with marketing, or just come and get more of me. Lucky you. So without further ado, Lizzie, welcome so much to Map It Marketing. Thank you for coming. And I will let you say something in a moment. But also, when you do, would you be able to tell us a little bit about your background and who you are and why you think I might have invited you along?
Rachel, thank you so much for the lovely intro. It's so nice to be on this with you. I feel like I know you, even though we've never actually had a conversation before, because, through the wonders of social media. So
it's funny, actually, isn't it? Because I've never heard your voice. I'd realized I'd never heard your voice today, but I feel like I've had an internal Lizzie voice in my head for weeks as we've been talking on the interwebs.
And how does the internal Lizzie voice match up to the actual voice? You're
a lot calmer and less, you sound a lot gentler in real life.
Oh, that's
not like you were nasty. That sounded terrible, but more just, I feel like because you have such a confident, strong voice when you do your posts, I kind of had them in this quite like, and here we're doing this. It's like quite a teaching kind of voice, and you're so relaxed in person. It's like a weird, I feel now I'm going to have to change the voice when I read your post. I might have to go back and read a couple of posts in this voice.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. What a cool thing to say. So I, as well as being a, part-time school teacher in Rachel's head.
Yes.
I am a writer and I am a content marketer. And specifically, those are kind of my superpowers, I guess. But I use those superpowers to help consultants and freelancers, particularly consultants and freelancers who hate selling. I help them kick cold calling to the curb, because you don't actually need to do old school selling to grow your business. Great if you love it. If you don't need to do that. You can actually attract your ideal clients by improving your website copy and by mastering content marketing. So that's what I help people do. And I guess I came to that through many years of working in business development for creative agencies and getting an understanding of how service businesses can grow effectively, but also 12 years working as a copywriter. And so I've written website content and articles and blogs and, you name it, for businesses in New Zealand and Australia and the US for over a decade now.
You write beautiful LinkedIn posts, and I find them beautifully crafted. And I do think it's really interesting, this whole thing around the stop cold calling, because there is this war that goes on between marketing and sales, where marketing, sales need marketing, but they often want to do it all by themselves. They're like a stroppy toddler. So apologies to all the sales trainers out there, and they often want to just be able to go, you need to have the cold calling. But I know for us, as we focus on our content marketing, and I always say it's such a long game. This is not like a 2-week thing that you do. There's this amazing alchemy that happens where suddenly this perpetual kind of momentum happens, where you start getting 1 and then 2, and then this constant stream of people coming into your inbox, and they're basically begging you to work with them. They're going, hey, I'm ready now. And the sales process is often a 10, 15-minute just a conversation around the dynamics of that, as opposed to meeting after meeting after meeting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of magical, hey, because if you're putting great content out there in the world, is you're building a relationship with people. So by the time they actually come to reach out with you, they feel like they know you already, just like I feel like I know you already.
And I know you.
Yeah, right. So it's magic. It's genuinely magical. For me, I'm a salesperson as well as a writer. So I'm not fazed by the prospect of cold calling. And I think that is, I think that's important to say, that this is not, I do what I do, not because I'm scared of sales. And sales is not scary. I think a lot of people are scared of sales, and they don't realize that all sales is finding solutions to people's problems. And that's all it is. It's nothing more complex than that. And that's not scary. But the reality is that you don't actually ever have to do any of the more confronting bits of sales if you've got your content marketing sorted.
Right. I always feel too, for me, I'm half Dutch, my husband's Dutch, and there's this really good Dutch phrase called Nixon, which is the art of doing nothing, which I think is awesome. And I'm trying to bring that back. I think the art of doing it, but to do the art of doing nothing, if you're trying to grow a business, I love the idea that your pre-sales or your pre-qualification is one-to-many. In selling, it is by nature a one-to-one situation in general. But with marketing, it's one-to-many. So if you see marketing as your stepping stones or trust-building blocks towards selling, you're doing one-to-many. And then from that, it's easier to get that sales process.
Absolutely. And I think just as an extension of that one-to-many, if you're good at niching, which is a whole nother topic that we could talk about for, months, that one-to-many is alchemized back into a one-to-one conversation, because although you're talking to many people, you're so specific on the persona that you're talking to that it still feels like that intimate.
Oh, definitely. And yet it always should be just to one person, shouldn't it, when you're talking? But it's more just when you're talking to one person in a social media platform or on a website, each person's getting that or on email, you're getting that internal connection with that one person, but you're doing it on a mass scale.
Yes.
And by mass, it could be 10, 100, 2,000 or whatever. A mass isn't, it's just more than one, really, when we're talking.
Yeah.
So I specifically asked you to come on here. We could talk about, I said in the introduction, the pre-introduction, we could talk about lots of different things. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today was case studies. You did a series. I've noticed with your content marketing, which I think is clever, and I've been doing a similar thing with my podcast, didn't copy you, but definitely I probably was subconsciously influenced by you, is you seem to take a theme, I think weekly, I'm not too sure, maybe it's sometimes fortnightly, where you take a theme and you go deep in that theme. And one of those themes was case studies.
Yes, I love case studies. I only really do 4 things for people. I do website copy, I write blogs, I do case studies, and I do some coaching as well. And I'm really think that focus is really important. You get better and better at the things you do if you focus and just do a few things. But case studies, I think, are probably one of my favorite things of all to do, because the thing I love doing more than anything else is talking to amazing people and extracting learnings from them. And so case studies is a wonderful process for that. And a case study is, it's essentially just a story of a project, right? But it's not just any old project. You don't necessarily want to create a case study for every single project that you do as a service provider. You want to cherry pick those really interesting projects that contain learnings that are relevant to your clients. And also, ideally, I guess you want to cherry pick projects that show off your abilities to solve problems and deliver results for your clients to their best advantage. So, yeah.
Because I one of the things I said in the initial, and it's always unfair because you don't hear the intro until the podcast goes live. So this is really mean. I'm referring back to it. But one of the things I said in here was that there was definitely a time in Identify's history where if I had to go to a client to ask for one, we wouldn't have been able to get one because we were doing a shit job. We were doing a mediocre job in what we were doing. This is quite a long time ago. But I think one of the things I realized was case studies is it's impossible to have a case study unless you've done a great job and you've got a great relationship with that client. And that's the crux and the power of a case study, isn't it?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of really, really bad case studies out there. And the reason they are really, really bad is because they are monologues. They are businesses telling stories of their projects all by themselves without the input of their clients. And you shouldn't do that because, that's not a case study. I mean, it's fine to tell the story of a project as part of a blog post and the things you've learned from it. Sure, knock yourself out. But that is not a case study. A case study is a duet. It's you, your insights, your take on the project, and your client and their insights and their take on the project. And those two things together become something greater. I like to think of a case study as a Devonshire tea is I think the best analogy that I've come up with.
I'm up with that. That sounds great.
Tasty, right? So if you've got a dry scone, it's not that appealing, right? And a dry scone is just like a business telling the story of a project all by themselves. But if you bring in the client's insights, you're putting some jam on your scone and it becomes stickier and more appealing immediately. And then you want to whack some cream on top of your scone because, who wouldn't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the cream is stats that prove results or glowing testimonials from your client, ideally both, And so there you've got that sort of trifecta.
Because I feel like with case studies, it's one of the things that we always recommend, like in our map at events. It's one of the things we say is that and testimonials are the best trust builders. And with service-based businesses, like especially the ones you work with, case studies are really important because it's not just that flash in the pan, I went to this great event. It is, hey, I had this long history with this person and this is what happened and the growth of it. And so there is that power in it. And I do think one of the things that I remember you and I had I said one of the things I said is that I quite enjoy our professional disagreements because sometimes you'll say something like, I don't know if I agree with that. And one of the things was I 100% believe that maybe it's for I'm going to fudge myself, but I think all businesses should look at outsourcing, getting their case studies written, because I know I can write, like I've been paid to write case studies and because I used to do journalism. So I know how to do that. And I used to love doing them. And I used to get paid to do them by clients. But when it came to our ones, there was no way I was going to do my own case studies, because as soon as the client starts saying nice things about me, I get all embarrassed. I don't pull out the things, and I'm trying to tell them often what it is that I did. And you said, oh no, I think sometimes you can, the business can do the case study. It doesn't have to be external. But do you think there is an advantage in having an external help?
Definitely. So you can do case studies yourself, because it's totally possible, but you're right. You have to get over that hump that you were talking about, that embarrassment of going, hey, so let's talk about me and how great I am.
It's pretty tricky, right? It happened in the podcast the other week, and I was like, shh, stop talking about me. Let's move on.
Right. It's genuinely incredibly awkward. And so there is that. And the other reason why it's actually a really great idea to delegate case studies, either by hiring a professional person to write them for you, or you can even just delegate the interview part of the case study to someone in your team who has not been involved with that project. And there's two reasons why that's really important. I guess the first is that a case study interview with a client is also an opportunity for a client to vent.
Yes.
If there is something that they are not comfortable with, they will often take that opportunity to talk about it. Now, this doesn't happen in every single case study interview I do for my clients, but it does happen quite a lot. It's like I'm almost in a quasi therapist. I'm coming in, I'm asking them to revisit the project. And that's not a bad thing if they talk about things that have gone wrong along the way. It's a great gift, in fact, actually, to that your client cares enough to bother giving you constructive feedback, but it almost always comes along with absolutely glowing feedback as well. This is not like I've never gone into a case study situation where they've gone, actually, we hated it and we hated you. And
Well, you'd hope you wouldn't recommend that person.
No, right?
You hope you'd have enough analogy to go, that I'm never asking that person for
not a case study project, that one. No. But often what will happen is they will go, hey, there were a few things they could have done better, and then tell me about them. And you need a neutral third party to extract that information, because the reason they can tell me is they know I've got no flesh in the game and they don't feel bad about it. And then I think the second reason why it's really important to outsource them is that it's just that fresh perspective. When you're so close to a project, it can be hard for you to understand what the really interesting angles of that project were, what the really valuable learnings were that you can extract from that project and share with other clients, and an external person can go, well, that's fascinating. Let's dig a little deeper into that, because that's really relevant. And you might go, oh, okay, cool. Let's,
I think that's really key. Like, I know that I used to do quite a lot of writing and interviewing people, all sorts of stuff. And I remember that I used to love going and working with quite technical businesses. I remember working with Becca and doing some content writing for them. And I was doing this thing with this guy, and he was in charge of the traffic light controlling. And someone said, look, it'll be really boring. But of course, he's fascinated by it. So I catch his excitement. And so I'm asking questions, but I'm asking it from a non-professional in that business, and I can pull it out. And that's what a case study person does, isn't it? Like a writer will ask questions that spark their curiosity. And those are exactly the questions that a prospective client is looking to answer, because when we're in the business, we know we want people to hear, but we don't know what people actually want to hear often. And those are two very different things.
Yes, absolutely. And often, always part of the case study process is I will have a conversation with my client about what they're trying to achieve with this case study. And I mean, of course, it's always, primarily is to establish trust and credibility. But more than that, it's like, what are we hoping to where are we hoping to add value through sharing this case study? Where are the valuable lessons here? What is it in this that is really relevant to your other clients? Because that's your angle. That's your juicy hook. That's what we're focusing on, you know? So we'll have that conversation up front. Then I'll go interview their client. And that often can give, that can flip things sometimes. And come back and go, actually, you know how we talked about that was the angle? It's not. This is the angle. But quite often people are well aligned.
Or similar. I think one of the things I found when we got our case studies done was the person that did them for us, Ruth, who, you know, is one of those other people I recommend to do case studies with. She said to me, oh, what's great is I've interviewed like 5 people and they've all said that these are your values, and they were the same values throughout, which was great because that was the reason we had crappy business, you know, 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, because we didn't have those values embedded. So it was like a real show to us that those values actually were consistent throughout those months.
That's wonderful. You've just reminded me I need to do that for one of my clients, actually, because that same thing happened. I did 5 interviews and people kept saying the same things about him, and I just listened themes out for him.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I've enjoyed by doing them for other people too, is sometimes you'll just see these common threads and you go, this is actually what you can say your business does because these people are saying the same thing over and over again. So you mentioned before that it needs to have the customer voice in, and it needs to have a bit of your voice in, and then you need to have those kind of results as well, or maybe some quotes. What with those results, are they numerical results? Is that what you want to see, as some really quick things there, or what do you want?
Ideally, yes, because different people want different sorts of information. So when you're creating rich and powerful content, you want to make sure that it includes storytelling, that it includes statistical proof, that it includes visual inspiration, and ideally some form of infographic as well, because infographics bridge the gap between visual inspiration and more sort of logical, rational. Because people are, I mean, gross simplification, right? But you've got people who are highly intuitive and story-driven in the way they absorb information. You have people who are highly visual in the way they absorb information. You have people that are highly analytical in the way you absorb information. And it's entirely probable that your client base includes people, all those people. So when you create a piece of content, you want it to have something for everybody. So that's an ideal case study would have some success stats in it. Success stats are not always easy. So don't feel like you can't do a project if you don't have some success stats. Glowing testimonials are also fantastic, you know.
We actually had someone that we approached that we had a huge success win with last year, and we ended up not going forward with it because there were heaps of glowing praise, but there was nothing specific. Like, I knew what the result was, but they didn't know the result. And our concern was, like the first month, I think we added like an extra 52K of sales to their turnover, and it was like pretty much standard after that. And they grew from 500,000 to 1.5 million in a year. Like we saw that.
That's wonderful.
They didn't have a finger on that. Like, we knew it and we could see it, but when they were asked, they were like, "Oh, I don't know what those are." And our concern was, if we publish that case study, even giving it because we can see those results, and someone asks them, "Hey, how was it?" and they were like, "I don't know what those results were," because they don't have a finger on it, we felt uncomfortable that would present an inaccurate view. So I do think that it's really important that the customer actually knows what that result is as well.
Agreed. You can actually ask when you're interviewing customers if there are results like that you want to direct line between your work and those results. You can ask leading questions. I don't normally recommend leading questions because they don't get the best, content back in return. But you could have asked, "So, Bob, since you've been working with us, in month 1, your revenue went up by this, and now you've increased X% to 1.5 million. How has the work we've done together contributed to that success?"
I think that sounds like a great solution. May need to go back to that one.
Right. Massively leading question.
Yes.
But you're right, because the work that you have done has contributed. You obviously want to ask those questions authentically. You don't want to, try and draw false
No.
But of course, in that situation, your work had a huge influence. Yeah.
No, that's helpful. So tell me some things that, like, we in episode 20, which is a couple of weeks before this one, we did some work with Joel Woolley. He does brand story guidelines around websites and how to use the brand story guide. And case studies is a really important part of social proof for that. So obviously, I understand the importance of them. Where should they fit on a website, and where else should you use case studies? Like, in what format? Is it just on the web, or what? How else can you use those case studies in your marketing?
Yeah, great questions, Rachel. So your first question, where should they fit on the website? I mean, every website should have a portfolio section. If you're producing, and this doesn't matter whether you're producing creative work, because portfolios are, typically used for designers or copywriters like me, or videographers. But if you're an accountant, you want a portfolio section. It's just that your portfolio section will include stories of great stuff you've done for your clients, case studies, essentially. So it's usually called portfolio or work or case studies. There'll be a section on your site that where that content lives. Case studies are an interesting thing because, I'm going to talk about customer journeys really quickly, which is a huge rabbit hole that we could disappear down.
We totally could, but let's
not emerge for years.
Yeah.
But just really quickly, and for anyone who's listening is not familiar with the concept of a customer journey, all a customer journey is that concept that a potential client moves through various stages of awareness of you as a solution to their problems until they're ready to buy. I pulled out this morning my favorite model. There's a business coach called Jane Anderson, and I'm just reading this off the screen actually. And her 4 stages of awareness, she really simplifies it beautifully. She goes, I don't know what I want, and I don't know you.
I like that.
It's great, isn't it? And then the next stage is, I don't know what I want. But actually, hers are not stages so much. Sorry, I'm just contradicting myself. They're sort of states of awareness. I don't know what I want, but I know you. So you've already got a relationship, but they don't really understand that you have something they have that they need. I know what I want, but I don't know who can help me out. And then the ideal situation is, I know what I want, and I know you can deliver the goods. And so that's the kind of optimal state of awareness. And but there's kind of beyond that. There's also, I know what I want. I know you can deliver the goods, and I like you, and I trust you. And so I'm going to ask you to help me out. And so that last step, that I like you, I trust you, that's kind of where case studies are really valuable. They can make that final push in that process. They can close the deal. They provide enough trust and enough relevant insights that you've solved similar problems for people like your potential client, that they're like, okay, this is the woman for me. I'm going to give her a call, So
I call it a third-party referral. It's kind of like someone else.
Yeah.
It's for those people that don't have that direct word-of-mouth referral and may not have had a direct interaction with you. It's giving them that extra reassurance that you aren't, actually somewhere in a in a dingy, I don't want to choose any country in case I come across as racist at a dingy hotel in some weird third world country, pretending you're doing whatever you're doing, like you actually are who you say you are.
They are incredibly strong social proof. And they also work really well at the top of the funnel, because if you've nailed your niche, there's nothing businesses and people like more than stories of someone solving the sort of problems they're experiencing. They're like, oh, I can learn something from this. I'm going to read this. So they actually also work at that top of the funnel. Now, you asked 2 other questions at the same time, Rachel. Remind me of.
Oh no, did I?
Well, I know where it sits. I said,
where should they be on the website, but also where else can you use them?
Oh,
and like in what format?
Yes, right. So you can use them everywhere, essentially. Yes, absolutely have them on your website. If you don't, please go get some case studies immediately, says the woman who actually hasn't got any case studies on her website.
It's okay. I have the same with frequently asked questions pages. I've been putting them on people's strategy for like 3 years. I only did ours this year. And now, of course, I tell everyone about how important it is because I don't feel guilty. And I didn't have case studies either. Like the thing is, I always say is, look, you only need to be less shit than your competitors. And you only need to do the bare minimum of marketing to get the results you have. Now, you're already currently booked out. Like, we're going to talk later about how to work with you. But people have to work in advance with you a lot of the time because you're so awesome, right? So if you added case studies, can the world of Lizzie cope with the influx?
Thank you so much.
What would you be doing?
Off the hook, Rachel.
This is the time that you do that on a quiet January.
Yeah. That is exactly what I will be doing next January, actually. You're right. So you can use them everywhere. You can use them on your website. You can use them on social media. You can use them in e-marketing. You can use them in proposals. They are incredibly powerful if you do RFPs. If you're an agency and you're regularly asked to bid in competitive bids for work, they always require case studies. So I suggest to people that they create kind of 4 variations of a case study. You're going to have your long copy variation, which tells the full story. And then you want a shorter version that would that could work for proposals, for portfolios, or potentially for e-marketing, about 500, 600 words. Okay. They tend to be a little more structured. You might go with the sort of time-honored problem, approach, outcome kind of structure there. Although try and use more creative headlines if you possibly can. And then it's also really, you can create what I call like a case study soap opera, where you chunk up your case study into lots of little installments. And that's brilliant to use on something like LinkedIn. Like that gives you a week of content to break up a good case study. And then at the end of the week, you can link to the full length one on your website as a kiss off.
That's a magic idea.
Genius, right? And then, of course, you also want to pull out those nutty little quotes and use those as testimonials scattered throughout your website. Anywhere that you can use a testimonial, really tattoo it on your arse, whatever works for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that will be the quote I'm using for this podcast. I was thinking that's actually kind of what I'm doing with the podcast. So I pull out quotes and then I use those quotes during the week to kind of like whet the appetite. And then on LinkedIn, I've worked out that I was just doing like an excerpt video of like a little bit of audio. But when you do video on LinkedIn, you get great engagement, but it only gets shown to like 200 people. But if I do like a post or a PDF post, I get thousands of views. So I've started doing for my podcast an image of the podcast, and then you'll see one today for the podcast that came out today, and then like 4 or 5 different quotes from the podcast laid out and turned into a PDF document to push it out. And that's kind of, I can see that happening with this case study because I'm visual, that you could repurpose the content in stages and have it like a colored document. I'm just thinking I'm going to do this for myself, and almost like an infographic where you could, it could be just images for a carousel in LinkedIn or Facebook, but on LinkedIn you could have it as a PDF, so it's a PDF document.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that would work super well. Like I love this idea of repurposing it. To be honest, I'm a bit disappointed in myself. I consider myself the queen of repurposing content, and I haven't thought about this in this depth with case studies. So I have considered myself illuminated right now.
Oh, I'm really pleased to hear that. But you know what? It's like, and you are the queen of content and repurposing content, but so many people aren't. And I think that's one of the biggest things about content marketing. If like I could have one takeaway from this other than go do some goddamn case studies already, which is that content marketing is only as good as the use you make of it. It's every piece of content, if you're producing quality content, represents hours and hours of work. So use it until it squeaks, use it until it's wrung out and you're sick of the sight of it, because, other people won't be sick of the sight of it. They aren't watching you as closely as you think they are, so you can get away with repeating yourself. In fact, you should be repeating.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Good content should be repeated. That was something I learned last year, because I, like you, because we write. For me, my content just flows out constantly. Like, I have to hold myself back and go, oh crap, I've already posted on LinkedIn today. I've had 4 ideas since then. I've got to write them down. I have too much content. I have different strategies for every platform, just so I have places to put all my content. Like, I have too much. But I know my
poster child.
I am the ADHD poster child. But I was talking before we record that I self-diagnosed myself. Everyone, I don't need a psychiatric assessment. I have just decided that I have ADHD. My father disagrees. He thinks I'm just lazy. But but I do feel like so many people struggle with this. If you spend time, like, let's take frequently asked questions or case studies, and you pull out of a good bit of meaty chunk of content and you spend time doing great captions and a good image, people aren't going to see it. Often it's only a small fragment of people see it the first time. And even if they don't, we know people take between 13 to 22 points of contact to kind of connect. So people could potentially see that 6 or 7 times over a couple of years, that same piece, and it's not going to damage your brand.
No, on the contrary, it's going to actually enhance your brand, because that's all a brand is the constant repetition of a single core proposition, right?
Do you do it with your LinkedIn posts? Because I don't think I've seen a repeat.
I do repeat themes. I don't necessarily repeat exact posts. So I'll say the same thing, but just write it again, because
you're not a content writer.
Yeah, I like writing.
Can I ask you a question? I'm going to get you to introduce like how to get in contact with you soon. But on that thing around themes, how far in advance are you planning those themes? Like, is it, like, how have you done that in your head?
Yeah. I'd like to say I plan in advance meticulously, Rachel, but I'd be lying.
Okay,
but
cool.
I do have I have a strongly defined content strategy. So I know what my themes are. Like, I've got 3 or 4 core themes that I mine repeatedly. And really that's about as planny as it gets. But what I do is I write blog posts and then I repurpose them. My LinkedIn content.
I do that a bit
too. It's led by the blog post. I will write a big long blog post, which is typically like, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000, sometimes 5,000 words. And
sounds like mine.
Right. Bloody baggy portmanteau things. And I'm incapable of short content. It's like I'm so much respect for pithy content writers, because I just can't do it.
I think that's awesome. So can I see if I can work out, now I'm putting myself on the line here because we didn't plan this. Can I see if I can work out what your core themes are? Or if I can guess a couple, at least one. So I believe your core themes are, one of them is that you need to put the customer at the heart and the center of your content.
Yes, to a degree, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, how would you say that?
No, I think that's really fascinating. I think for me, it's probably not a core theme, but because
value.
It's a value. Brilliant. You brilliantly put. Yeah. My core themes are probably more functional than that.
Oh, okay.
Because that is so fundamental to good marketing and good content. It is a theme that I come back to.
Okay, so I'm going to do your values. So I believe that your values are the one that the customer is in the core and center. The second one is that you have to tell interesting stories to capture people's imagination and keep them engaged.
Yes.
And then the third one, I'm laughing now. I'm joking about this one. The third one is 1,300 characters is just not enough, and you need to have 3,000. No, that's not it. That's not it. But and the third
more is more, baby.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I haven't used it yet. I've got used to living. I actually quite like limitations of word counts because it makes me pull words out. I do get very annoyed when I put something in and I've got to take words out. So I'm like, which paragraph am I going to take out of here? And I get ruthless. So I'm going to say customers in the core and center of it. Storytelling is key around doing that. And the last one I think I'm going to say is use real language, like use everyday language to describe things without getting too technical. That's what I think your values are.
Brilliant. I love it.
Is it correct?
It's pretty bang on, mate.
Okay, there we go. So that just shows that consistency of language shows where those values are coming through. And I would choose you because of that. Like if I was looking for a content writer, if that's one of the things I think is so important, like for content writers. And like I see this with, we used to have poor marketing for ourselves often because we'd use that excuse of we're too busy with businesses. But actually when you're in marketing or content or creation or stuff, it is so important to invest time into your own platforms, because we see how your values are by the way you're displaying your conversation or the images you use and all those sort of things. It is really important to have that reflection. It's not enough to live on the laurels of the work you do for your clients.
It's so important, Rachel. People need to know who you are to want to do business with you. And it's also, it's important to get off the fence and be yourself fully. Because your job is not only to attract your tribe, your job is also to scare away the people that can't handle the jandle, It's like not everybody wants to work with sweary Scots women who are opinionated. And I know this is shocking news. It's shocking news to me. But,
they have bad taste. They obviously have
terrible taste, poor darlings. Terrible taste. But, it's best that they know that's what they're getting up front, because, that way they can go find themselves someone calmer, safer. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting this because I'm a round woman, and I often have women say, oh, you're so brave showing yourself on social media. And it's interesting because I don't see it as a bravery thing, and I think it's slightly rude because I'm like, why? You think that, like I should be worried about it? But I do know that I definitely decided at some point, I remember deciding, I've worked out that no matter who I am and what I do, 30% of people who come into contact with me will not like me no matter who I am. So I might as well just be myself so I can get the right people around me. And that creates that sort of, it does, you're right, it attracts those people, but it definitely does. There are people that are great people who just do not like me, and vice versa. Let's be honest, like there are people I don't like either. And understanding that I had people I didn't like was very liberating for me to realize that meant that I also would be fair to assume that other people would also not like me. So when I do a podcast and I do a webinar and I do posts like you do, you do a lot of posts, I do a lot of posts. We're either going to be a lover or a stalker to people, right? They're either going to love us and love everything we do, or they're going to feel that we're cramming them and irritating them, and then we're a stalker, so they need to remove us, and they don't need to get a restraining order. They can just unfollow us.
Such a good lesson for life.
It is, right? Like it's not our job to decide whether we're a lover or a stalker.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. And it is so freeing when you finally, and it's tough for women because we're socialized to believe that we have to be likable.
Yes.
And I think that is utter bullshit. You don't have to be likable. You have to be kind. It's a different thing, a very different thing. You have to be kind. You have to show respect. You don't owe the world likability.
It's interesting though, because I do like you. Like I'd never met you before. So I think people are likable if you get them, right? You just don't have to be likable to everybody.
Exactly so. And that's I guess that's what I mean is you don't owe the world likability. You do not have to be universally liked. It is an impossible ambition to be universally liked.
Yeah.
Realize that and embrace it.
Yeah. And no one trusts someone that's universally liked.
No, because they're
slimy.
They are, you're right.
Because they're a chameleon.
Yeah.
I used to be a comedian because I used to just desperately want everyone to like me. And so people would get like whatever Rachel I thought they needed, and realizing I didn't have to do that actually was so liberating. And I found my people by doing that too. Like I think we waste women, but I do think it's a woman thing mainly. We do spend a lot of time trying to be everything to everybody else to try and keep everyone else happy. But it ends up being a very isolating thing for us because we don't find our people that we naturally connect with. And finding those people are also, it's very good for us, not just for those people who get to meet us, right?
I'm so glad that you stepped into your
Me too. It's much better. Great. It's much more fun. Plus, like I'm doing this way back in the past. But like it means I've reconnected with people too that also are like that. I don't know if you saw, I had a LinkedIn post yesterday, which is like 2 months ago. But I went karaoke singing in the middle of the day with my friend Emma, and we knew each other at school. And we've kind of both come into this recently, and it's like a reconnection, I wouldn't have found that friendship if it hadn't been for the fact that I stepped back into the light of where I was meant to be. And I do think we find it hard. And I think, too, for content writers and people that are creating things, we have to chameleon a little bit our writing style sometimes to fit. So we are smudgy, tend to be a bit more smudgy because we have to write in the voices of other people. So it can make it a bit easier to forget that we still have our own distinct voice when we write. Which is important. That's really true. And that's why I love your voice. I feel like it is your distinct voice. It is less school teachery than I thought it was. So I'll have to do the soft tone now.
I am a little concerned about the school teachery. It's like that's made me go, am I too didactic? I need to tell more stories and be less.
Oh no, I think that's school. I used to be a teacher. Don't be offended. I feel like it's more just. It feels like a voice of authority. It's someone who I know is doing what they're doing.
Okay.
So into my head, that's a school teacher voice.
Okay, cool.
It's not like a school teacher, like
knowing what I'm talking about.
It's not like a listen very much, listen. It's not like that. Sorry, my Dutch grandmother stuff was coming out through me just then.
That was brilliant.
It's not that, but it is just that feeling of knowing that you know what you're talking about. It's a very calming place when you're in the presence of someone who actually does have depth in the words that they're saying. It's not fluffy.
Good. That's nice to hear. And you see how my insecurity came out there, my female insecurity about being maybe too assertive.
Yeah, you're not being assertive.
Isn't that the crap we have to deal with? Eh?
It's rubbish. Okay, so now, Lizzie, I have loved this. This has been fantastic. And I think it was cool having that little conversation at the end around those sort of feeling things as well. But if people, I know you've currently got a waiting list at the time of recording. Do you often have a waiting list?
I'm usually booked about at least a month out, but that I say to people, don't let that put you off getting in touch if you do have something urgent, because if it's a smaller piece, I can often shoehorn it in. And that's often how I start relationships with people. We'll do something small together and it goes from there. But if you have
mainly with professionals, right? You work mainly with coaches or people in that professional services space.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I do a lot of work with creatives, like creative agencies, videographers, photographers. I work with professional services that are, kind of more like your classic professional services like consultancies. I haven't worked with lawyers, actually. Lawyers are an odd professional service thing of their own, very own.
Cool. Shall I use that as one of the breakout quotes of this podcast?
Yeah, go for it. Now, I don't think lawyers and I would gel, so I'm just pulling them out of my.
There's some cool lawyers. I worked with a really amazing lawyer last year. Do not pigeonhole.
No, there are some super.
There's some awesome, amazing
ones,
and
I love what they do. I think it's just I say
no,
that.
but it's just that connection, right? Okay, and how do people get hold of you?
They can hit me up on my website, lizziedavidson.co.nz, or email me hello@lizziedavidson.co.nz.
So they'll be in the show notes. Plus, I highly recommend, if you're on LinkedIn, giving Lizzie a follow and listening and reading her posts, which will help you build trust with her because she's amazing. And Lizzie, thank you so much for giving your time today. It's been so lovely. And it's been lovely to see your face as well. So not that everyone on the podcast can, but I got to. So that was awesome.
Lovely to spend time with you too, Rachel. Thanks so much.
I'll catch you on LinkedIn later.
Beautiful. Oh. Have a gorgeous Friday.
Thank you. You too.
Lizzie was so great to talk to, and I really enjoyed hearing about how she uses case studies. Now, I want to talk you through a little bit about the core features of a case study from this podcast. So Lizzie talked about how it was really important to have an authentic voice of the customer. It's not enough just to share your side of the story. It's good to have a few powerful pull-out quotes that help people skim and understand what the benefit of working with you would be, a list of clear outcomes and results that people can scan easily, and a breakdown of the key parts of the project and a highlight of some of the challenges found and overcome. And last, she recommended having some sort of visual representation, which could be a summary of facts presented via an infographic or a graph or an image to help tie everything together. One of the things I really loved about Lizzie's time with us today is talking about how you could use these case studies in different formats over and over again. And in episode 19, we're going to just do that. I'm going to talk to you about how I repurpose content to make our marketing message consistent and clear and just everywhere without having to do a whole lot of extra thinking. In fact, I'm going to use how I use this podcast to create a whole lot of different content. But next week in episode 18, you are in for a treat. Lucas O'Keefe is an amazing marketer. I've watched him. He grew a TikTok platform. I didn't know him then. And he recently has just grown to 150,000 followers on Instagram in a matter of months. When I first contacted him a few months ago, he was at 100,000. And so just in a few months, he's gained another 50K. He's a really clever marketer and someone that I'm really dying to talk to about how to get that Instagram growth. I've noticed him starting to lurk on LinkedIn, so I reckon that's the other area that he's going to be working on. So we're going to be sharing some information with him and help you work out how to grow your audience if that's part of your marketing plan. Until then, have a great week.
Thanks for tuning in today to Map It Marketing with me, Rachel Klaver. Make sure you hit subscribe in your podcast app so you don't miss an episode. And if you want notes or information about today's podcast, go to rachelklaver.com/podcast for more information.